We're now up to Arcanum XII of the Mebes Tarot Mages course, which is the Hanged Man, pathway from Netzach to Chesed, and the Hanged Man has accomplished the great work. As Levi says, the true aim of the great work is to volatilize the fixed after having accomplished the fixation of the volatile. Ouspensky tells us that he chose this way himself. For this he went over a long road from trial to trial, from initiation to initiation, through failures and falls. And now he has found truth and knows himself. Paul Christian says of the Hanged Man that he expresses in the divine world the revelation of the law. The sign of the 12th Arcanum is Lamed. Its numerical value is 30. The astrological correspondence is the sign of Libra in the zodiac. The hieroglyph of the Arcanum is a hand in a wide sweep that sets all its joints in motion. This is the powerful scope of a person who has acquired rights personally and wants to use them. It's like the new Aleph, not only balanced in 3 directions, but already rich in the wisdom of life. Let's see what the arithmetic deconstruction of the number of the Arcanum 12 can give us. 12 equals 1 plus 11. The master of the 12th Arcanum placed his poise and his essential being, 1, ahead of the Arcanum of the chain, 11. This is the head of the school, plus the school itself. The 3-planed Aleph honoured the world with the process of generating the egregoric chain. He descended from higher subplanes and did not disdain implementation. He incarnated in the literal or figurative sense of the word. The above deconstruction gives us the titles of the Arcanum in the fields of the Theosophical Ternary. If the archetype is embodied, then the term assigned to this incarnation by the school of Jewish scriptural interpreters will be Messiah. In the case of a lesser Aleph, belonging to the plane of man, a balanced and harmonious being that by his own will created in his astrosome the desire to help his neighbour, then the act of such a person will be named caritas. Mercy in the realization plane is love for the neighbour, as Christians understand it. This is also a kind of embodiment of our harmonious person, immersed in serious issues and voluntarily agreeing to do other things that he himself would never need to engage with. How, however, to find the analogy of this in the plane of nature? What will be the example of manifestation of the subtle and the dense, of the dispersion of the one in differentiation, an example of the centre nourishing the periphery? For such an example, walk close. We will not be original and dwell on the long known to mankind, which is found in all mythological systems, a description of the nutrition of the planets of the solar system by its radiant centre, the sun. The visible movement of this centre in the ecliptic creates an idea of the zodiac and its division into the so-called 12 signs. Zodiac as will be the 3rd name of the Arcanum. Look for the mechanism of the 12th Arcanum, not only in the objects of the first 2 headers, titles, but also in the mysterious transition of subtle solar emanations, as if committed in themselves into those crude attributions of the worlds of fauna, flora, and mineral formations that they are determined. 12 equals 11 plus 1. 11 was before the unit. 11 encircled the unit. 11 seemed to temporarily assimilate the unit, and this is the mystery of the number 12. But the unit spawned our 11. It turns out that she sacrifices herself to her own offspring. It turns out that if the chain, 11, was created by the great principle of the covenant, then the appearance of the Messiah is in itself the character of the sacrifice of the archetype, manifested for the salvation of mankind. If a person has actively shown mercy to his neighbour, then in this mercy lies the law of the voluntary sacrifice of the interests of the benefactor to the interests of the beneficent. If the sun gives our planet life-giving emanations, then in this process you can see an element of the sacrifice of the vitality of the sun to the interests of the life of the earth. The picture of the 12th Arcanum illustrates precisely this side of its interpretation. On it we see the figure of a man hanged by his left leg. He is upside down. The right leg of the hanged man is bent at the knee and laid behind the left, so that the figure of a four-pointed cross is obtained. The hands are connected behind his back, so that the arms and head of the figure form a descending triangle. The crossbar to which the figure is suspended rests on two tree trunks with chopped branches. The number of remaining branches is 12, 6 on each side. Who is this hanged man? What does he do, or what did he do? His legs and feet are facing up. His head is facing the ground. This means that his best resources serve the earth. His attention is focused on the earth. At the top, he takes only the gain point. He is the messenger of the upper and the lower, the higher and the lower, the mentality in the physical plane. It carries within itself the completeness of the process of the involutive triangle. It involves into the matter a higher principle for the revival and refinement of matter itself. But his involutive triangle is crowned with a cross of hermetic virtues, which indicated the path to this involution, to this sacrifice, and regulated its implementation. The hanged man is outlined by the shape of trunks and crossbars, strongly reminiscent of the sign of the synthetic Arcanum Tau. The idea of sacrifice mysteriously contains the idea of completeness. The sheer number of branches, 12, a symbol of the physical plane, again brings up the idea of completeness of an involutive process. Summarizing the impression delivered by the picture, I'll say, everything breathes here with the idea of serving the higher to the lower for the salvation of the lower, and with the exact plan of completeness of the involutive half cycle. It symbolizes a sacrifice of the superior to save the inferior. 12 equals 2 plus 10. An attempt at cognition, 2, prevails over the system of the universal mill, 10. Where is the victim? This is the formula for those brave minds who, during one of several incarnations, consciously sacrifice the joys of their personal lives, the pleasures of the physical plane, maybe even part of their mystical urges for work in classrooms and laboratories, for dry searches of imperfect relative, sometimes illusory secular science for the future of humanity. They believe that the wise neutralization of terrestrial binaries by the scientific and altruistic effort will overcome the involutive tendency of the astral of our planet. All these people's lives are an act of sacrifice. 12 equals 10 plus 2. No, say others. Our idealization of the future is better. Science is an enemy of humanity. The universal mill is your best friend. The only useful science, 2, is that whose conclusions fit the wheel of the Sphinx. May this wheel teach us, so that weak cells of our planet do not fight against the powerful astral flow of the whole organism, that they are general transformations of the whole system, and the rest is satisfied during static epochs. Down with civilizing ideals. Down with the pentagram effort, overwhelming the natural impulses. Life in conformity with nature is the key to salvation. The traditions that glorify the struggle for culture, the victory over the elements, must be sacrificed. Then the gesture of the Lamed's extended arm will be integrated into the figure overall. It is not about being able to move this arm, but to move with him. 12 equals 3 plus 9. Metaphysical development, 3, determines the degree of power over the work of Trismegistus, the cloak of Apollonius, and the staff of human prudence. Summarizing, determines the initiation, 9, and the application of initiatory elements to life. That is, this development leads to a modification of initiatory systems and the sacrifice of their antiquated methods when the triangle that governs us, Aleph, Mem, Shin, appeared to us in a different light, that is, when our absolute logic has been perfected. 12 equals 9 plus 3, say others. To follow the established tradition, streaming in a chain of teaching, it is better to use the wise prescriptions of old, until, in time, the metaphysical creator element, 3, is perfected through the method and routine of the old and proven. It is the formula of the established schools, 9, that prepare generation after generation, so that each person, with time and the natural growth of the creative element, can become productive, 3. In this formula, the possibilities offered by the time are sacrificed to the routine principles. 12 equals 4 plus 8. And the primacy of authority, the formula on which authority, 4, creates the laws, 8, in which the legality of the demonstrations is sacrificed to the hierarchical principle. Or 12 equals 8 plus 4. Here, on the contrary, there is the primacy of law, 8, logically deduced from the conditions of life of a given time. To this law, individual authorities are sacrificed, even more firmly established. 12 equals 5 plus 7. Let the inner work of the personality, 5, lead to the victory of the subtle over the dense, 7. However, the 7, the immediate victory of the subtle, 3, over the dense, 4, must be sacrificed to the process of formation of the pentagrammatic principle. 12 equals 7 plus 5. No, say others. On the contrary, the victory of the spirit over form, 7, must be the starting point of the formation of the pentagram, 5. That work on the individual principle, 5, is sacrificed to the principle symbolized by the Sefer and Netzach, 7. 12 equals 6 plus 6. This formula is the synthesis of the desperate polemics of all deconstruction precedents, polemics whose negative aspects are so well presented by Stanislas de Guaita in the 5th chapter of his work La Clef de la Magie Noire, the Key of Black Magic. 6 versus 6 is the friction arriving from different understandings of the Arcanum 6 by two individuals, and the struggle of two consciences, not illuminated by the superior principle of unitary philosophy, and therefore not being able to manifest totally in its carriers, fight of two intelligences nourished with various relative truths, of two wisdoms acquired partially in fields other than life experience, of two intuitions reflecting in a different way the same cliché, etc. In effect, this formula corresponds to a confusing image that gives meditation. It is not easy to find in it the sacrifices that must and can be made, however, each of us should seek to discover and understand them. After this analysis by division into two components, let's deploy the number 12 in more elements. These developments will reveal to us the zodiacal plane, which can be called the physical plane, and more wisely, the plane of sacrifice. Every accomplishment or work, be it the transmutation of common metals into noble metals, or the effort to teach abstract science to a lazy and staid student, belongs to the involutive hemicycle. It is a descent, a sacrifice of the subtle to the dense, an affirmation to establish in this density the fulcrum for the future ascent, for the beginning of the evolutionary hemicycle. It is the basis for the work that will ennoble and make subtle the dense. This is why, in Hermetic symbolism, the final phase of the great work is represented by the descending triangle, which, all the more, is still oppressed by the quaternary cross. This symbol is the guiding star of all incarnations of the Logos principle, even if the manifestation seems insignificant to us. We cannot explain here all the possible deconstructions of the number 12. We will analyze only the following. There's a little diagram at the top. The first of these figures, which is 12 equals 4 plus 4 plus 4, is interpreted as being a ternary of quaternaries. The second, which is 12 equals 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, is a quaternary of ternary. The third is a set of 6 binaries, that's the 2s, forming a double polarized duodenary. Let us analyze these deconstructions one by one. 12 equals 4 plus 4 plus 4. It is a ternary. Let us apply it to the superior liberation scheme Aleph, Mem, Shin, and look at each of the points of this triangle, the 4 elements, fire, earth, air, water. This will give us the full interpretation of this deconstruction. Applying it to the case of a human incarnation, we will have the following 3 phases. First, the Aleph phase, the general picture of the resources that man has in his incarnation. This phase is subdivided according to astrology in the following 4 elements. Health, that is, the general provision of vital forces, Vita. Material resources, Lucrum. Environmental and composition of the family in which the human being is born, Fratres. And 4, the father and his status, the genitor. It should be noted that the first item corresponds to the subtle active element, the fire, the second to the passive and dense, the earth, the third to the air that stirs and activates, as the yod, and the fourth to the transmitting element of the tradition, the vow, which corresponds to water. 2. Mem phase. The evolutionary human achievements during the incarnation. This phase can be subdivided into the following 4 elements. Generation of children, Nati. The support provided by the state of health, Velotudo, by the servers, friends and other auxiliaries. C. Marriage, Uxor, the wife. And 4. Everything related to death itself, Mors, and the death of its ancestors. Third, the Shin phase. The evolutionary transformation of your life. Transformation that can be achieved by your own effort and depends upon religious conceptions, pietas, devotion, individual social or political activity, regnum, all the aspects that the person knows how to create to support the activity above, benefactor, and D, all obstacles that hamper his achievements, that is, Enemies, dangers, limitations of the freedom, etc. Prison. I have to stop here.